outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, CEO of the Crone Law Firm. And as many of you know, I enjoy eating, and I do it often. I have at least 3 meals a day, and very often one of those meals is served to me by our guest, Kelly English, who is a chef here in town and owns such notable restaurants as Restaurant Iris and Second Line and Inphenos on the Hill and probably others. But Kelly, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thanks for having me, and God bless you for eating out as often as you get to. The last year and a half in my industry, all of us really appreciate it.
Well, I was a trendsetter. I did it before COVID. My wife and I are both lawyers, and neither one of us are very good cooks. And we eat out frequently, but particularly during the shut-in, we participated in Mayor Strickland's eating local promotion, where he was donating money to, I think it was Expungement Fund, when you posted a picture of eating out. And yeah, you're right. I represent a lot of restaurants and restaurant workers, and it's my heart goes out to you because I can't imagine what it's been like the last year.
I liken it to preparing for an algebra exam and walking in to take the exam, and someone putting a geometry exam in front of you and saying it's still math, just do it. Right. And it's not at all what we had been prepared for. Is to change our business drastically that quickly. It was something, I'll say that.
Well, I thought there were a number of restaurateurs that I thought really rose to the occasion and did a couple of things simultaneously. One, taking care of your workers. I think that was key, and also adapting a new business model. How hard was that?
Tough. It is very difficult to be creative and productive at the same time. Creativity and productivity do not get along at all. And we all had to be insanely productive. No matter if we took care of our employees or not, our team shrunk drastically, just from what we could afford. And we all had to be very creative in how we were going to approach this brand new model of business, where we were no longer inviting people into the dining rooms, and we had to kind of stand out from everybody else as to what we were offering. So, it's when I think about creativity and productivity, I think about asking a guitar player to write a new song while they're playing a song that they've already written. It just doesn't happen. And all of those things happen so quickly that none of us had time to just stop. All right, let's hit reset. Let's see what we're going to do. Let's get some plans together. It was just, shooting from the hip, left and right.
Are there any innovations that, looking back on it now, you think were the silver lining, that you were able to make an innovation either in terms of your offerings or the way you do business that you wouldn't have done without the lockdown?
Yeah, we've learned that the end of our business is not the front door. We've learned that we've seen for years that people want to eat at home. We didn't know how to listen to it without being jolted the way we were. We've seen Uber and DoorDash and places like that really make a whole business on just bringing our food to people at home. And if we can cut that middleman out and we can get things in people's hands that they want to eat, and maybe it's not delivery. We've done a broad line of cold but prepared items that are easy to reheat, that we won't stop doing. And to be honest, I think the biggest silver lining of this whole thing was that we really had to look at our business model and say, how do we make this sustainable, and not just for the owners, but for the people working in those restaurants. And there's been a lot of positive change that we've made over a relatively short time. And you could argue that these were long past due, but the fact of the matter is that we're here now, and we've got to face some of the things to try to get people better wages and insurance. And there's a lot of things that we wouldn't dare do, and things that we didn't think that we could do, that we're figuring out a way to do them. And maybe there's things we don't do that we did before. Every restaurant's a little bit different. We're not cookie cutters, and we've learned that through this pandemic as we've talked to our colleagues. And some of them aren't looking for the same things we're looking for, and we're looking for different things than they are. And it's just it's a crazy world.
You think it's brought the Memphis restaurant community together?
Undoubtedly. I'm proud to be a member of this industry in this town. We have I don't know if people really truly understand how special the community of hospitality is here in Memphis. I can't find, I grew up in New Orleans, and that's a very different climate. At least in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was working in New Orleans, it was more cutthroat. Everybody wanted to be the best. And if that meant taking advantage of your employees, not maybe actively, but not doing enough to really think about them enough, that was certainly prevalent. Here, we talk every day. There was a group thread of about 20 to 25 restaurants through this pandemic where, we were trying to figure out what we were doing together. And we would take the regulations that were put out for us. And no offense to anybody that put them out, but not any of them worked in a restaurant before, or not many of them. And so we would take the regulations, we would figure them out together, and we would move as one in our interpretation of them. So if there was an issue with the way that we were doing it, we would all be together and correcting it at the same time. This is an amazing, amazing community. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Well, when I first became an adult in Memphis and started making my own eating decisions, there weren't a lot of options. I'm talking about late 80s, early 90s. And over the last 10 or 20 years, there's been such a proliferation of world-class places to eat in Memphis that rival places like New Orleans. Is there something in the water? What do you think has happened to generate all of these great places to eat in Memphis?
As in opposition to one of my favorite musicians, Dr. Johns, I'll say right place, right time. And I think that Memphis is a special place. I think that one of the really interesting things about here is that we're all truly fans of each other in the industry. I'm a fan of so many of my colleagues. And I think that before the time you're talking about, I think that the way that you might have described restaurants in towns outside of not just Memphis, but outside of those big dining towns is kind of pedestrian, where this restaurant has this, you have to have these three things on the menu to be a restaurant in X town, so on and so forth. And I think we've gotten to a point where we stopped trying to emulate a model that was set out for us, and we truly tried to tell our stories. If you come to Restaurant Iris, I'm trying to tell you a little bit about my grandparents. And if you go to Andrew Michael, they're trying to do the same thing. The same thing at Las Tortugas, the same thing at Payne's Barbecue. The same thing at all these different restaurants. And that transcends culture and race, ethnicity, all those things. And that we are just trying to tell you a little bit about who we are. And we hope you enjoy what we give you to tell those nonverbal stories.
Sure. Let me kind of switch gears on you a little bit. When did you decide, man, I want to cook for a living? Did you always have a passion for cooking?
No. Well, yeah. I mean, I grew up in New Orleans, and part of growing up in New Orleans is you're not a real man until you cook for yourself. You just aren't. And so that's part of growing up in New Orleans is learning that. Now, sometimes it takes learning or leaving a place to realize the special things about it that you're proud of. And I went to Ole Miss, and I love Oxford, Mississippi. It is not the same food culture as New Orleans. It's just a little different. And I miss a lot of those things there. And I started cooking in restaurants. I went to college to be a lawyer. My dad is a district attorney in Louisiana, and he's practiced law for a long time. And I just thought, that's what I was going to do. So I went to college and I got a job in a restaurant, and I really liked the idea of making people smile for a living. If you're going into a lawyer's office, no offense, you're not smiling. I mean, there's some strife you're going through.
Kelly, and says, "Oh, goody, I get to go hire me a lawyer today."
Nobody. And so, but I was really nervous to tell my dad that I wanted to cook and not be a lawyer. And when I did, he was just excited that I wasn't going to be a lawyer, that I was going to get to do anything else. And really, when I think about it, you know, I watched my dad my whole life come home from work and relax at the stove. He liked to cook. My family growing up, my dad cooked. My mom didn't. My dad did the dishes. My mom didn't. It was an interesting dynamic there. And he did it out of love and out of what he really enjoyed doing. So in some ways, I kind of grew up just to be just like my dad, with doing something a little bit different. But I went to college at Ole Miss. I lived in Barcelona for a little bit. And then I moved to New York to go to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park up there afterwards. And then I went back to New Orleans and worked in a few fancy restaurants before settling here in Memphis in 2008. So Iris has been open for 13 years, which kind of blows my mind, that that this place has been open that long.
It is, because it feels, for a native Memphian, it feels like a new restaurant, but
teenager.
You keep it fresh. That's another reason why it seems new.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that we've learned to balance over the years are the things that people want to come back to over and over and feel really, it feels comforting to them to have these certain dishes. And the other things, you know, we like to change with the seasons. So it's fun to work with the network of producers and farmers and other chefs throughout this area to see what it is that we're going to work with, and kind of let those ingredients dictate a few of the dishes as opposed to the other way around.
Well, one way that you are similar to a lawyer is there are lots of chefs that are great chefs, but they're not great business people. And there are lots of lawyers that are great lawyers, but they're terrible business people. You've managed to be a great chef and a very successful business owner. When did you decide, yeah, I'm ready to, I guess in 2008, you said, I'm ready to open my own shop. What was the motivation behind that?
You know, so I came up for an Ole Miss Florida game in early 2008. And I went to Cafe 1912 for brunch. And I was with my now ex-wife's family, but then my fiance's family, and Coach Hayes, who owns 1912 and owned La Tourelle, which was the restaurant that preceded Iris at the address it's at, overheard me talking about work. And he came over and he said, "Hey, look, I got this restaurant down the street that I'm thinking about selling. Would you like to take a look at it?" And I was very happy where I was in life. And when he brought me in there, it just felt exactly like the restaurant that I would always want to open. And I looked up and there was a stained glass fleur-de-lis right when you walked in. I said, "Oh my, I mean, that's a sign." And then we walked out front, and over what is now the Playhouse, there was a rainbow. And I turned to the people I was with and I said, "A unicorn is going to jump out of the bushes in a second." Like, just there's too much happening here. And you know, I went back to New Orleans to go back to work the next day, and Coach Hayes and I came to an agreement that next day. I turned my notice in at the restaurant, and I got to work. Now, I don't come from, I wasn't well funded. I didn't have a bunch of, you know, my parents' money to open this restaurant. I came up here. Coach Hayes agreed to be the bank for me, and he owner financed the loan for me for 2 years, which allowed me a little bit of time to get some receipts together to get a small business loan. It also let me devote, I think I had a $30,000 line of credit that I opened to renovate the inside. And it let me devote all of that to the interior of the restaurant. The equipment came with it. And the day before we opened, I think I had like 45 cents left to my name. That was it. And my gosh, I'm glad it worked. And yeah, so the rest is history. But, you know, there's a lot, you know, my now business partners loaned me the money to renovate another portion of the interior during that time. And that kind of speaks to Memphis, and that Memphis really appreciates and recognizes when somebody will roll up their sleeves and just get to work. And I don't care if you're white collar, blue collar, whatever you are, it's hard work here, and it's recognized, and it doesn't go unnoticed. And when you do it, and when you do it from the heart, this community really pulls together for you.
I think you're absolutely right. Memphis has always been a welcoming town, unlike a lot of southern towns, which are pretty insular. I think I've mentioned before on this program that until very, very recently, there were no statues in Memphis dedicated to native Memphians. W.C. Handy, Boss Crump, Martin Luther King, you can go on and on. All of those folks that were big in Memphis, they came from somebody, Elvis Presley, they all came from someplace else. How was it coming from New Orleans to Memphis? Was there any culture shock there, or anything you learned about Memphis that surprised you?
The great thing, like you just said about Memphis, is that you don't have to be from Memphis to be from Memphis. This town is ready for impact. And that doesn't mean that it's lacking in any particular area or doesn't have something somebody else does, but it is truly ready for impact. And that was one of the things that I really, when I started brainstorming what we would do at Iris, I felt like that what we really wanted to do was what Memphis would respond to the best. And I'm thankful that we were right about that. But we always wanted to represent at Iris what we thought that the people in Louisiana would have cooked had they settled in Memphis. So it's kind of a view of Creole cooking from the lens of what would it be with the ingredients we have around here, which was a really fun study to take place in for the last 13 years.
Now, as you and I talked about offline before we started, my wife and I had dinner out there earlier in the week at Iris. Don't mind saying it was a great meal. But I noticed that next door at Second Line, which is also your property, you've always had a great outdoor space, but you've really just, I mean, there's every square inch of that lot you're using now. How did that come about?
So in the middle of the pandemic, we knew that at some point that we were going to come back to dining rooms, and we were going to come back to serving in person. And all of the studies had been showing, it's safer to eat outdoors, safer to eat outdoors. And while we were closed, without there being a big mess of construction, we found some cement, and we expanded that to every square inch we could, like you said, really, so we could not only take care of our business, but we could take care of our servers. We could take care of more cooks. We could give people the options to eat out if they didn't want to sit inside, or if they wanted to be a little more spread out. And, Memphians, they love to eat outside. Outdoor dining is something. There's a point in every fall and every spring where it really doesn't matter which restaurant it is. If you have outdoor dining, the outdoors are going to be full and the indoors are going to be completely vacant. And you can go to the next restaurant. People are dining to find a place to eat outside. And we really wanted to support our people the best we could and give them the tools that they needed to do their job.
Now, in the front yard of Second Line, you've got a new space that looks like, to me, it's more of a hangout kind of extension of the bar. Am I interpreting that correctly?
So for right now, it is. So one of the challenges of I mean, do you call this post-pandemic a new part of the pandemic? It's a more informed part of the pandemic. When we first started and we shut down dining rooms, we thought that touching a surface might kill you. And we know that that's not the truth now. So it's a little bit different, but there's nowhere in that busy time on Friday and Saturday nights when the tables are full and people are trying to come find a table, there's nowhere for anyone to wait. So for right now, we have that area ready for people to grab a drink from the bar, go wait outside for their table. When it gets to be a little more temperate outside, we'll put some more permanent patio furniture in over there so people can have a proper meal.
I'm glad you brought this up, because you just touched on an issue with me, not with your restaurant per se, but just restaurants in general. It's always irritated me that the the restaurants that had the longest waits had the smallest area for you to wait. Is that by design? Was that an idea that restaurant, that the operators had? You want to make it look like it was in demand, or was that just the fact that a place got popular and then just ran out of room?
Yeah, that's never been a design feature that I've looked for. But I would venture to say that, if you've got a good thing going, you want to probably put as many tables in as many usable spaces as you can, and it takes away the ability for that. That was part of the problem we had at Iris before we renovated it, and what it looks like now is, I don't know if many of the people listening have been, but we had a bar that I think had 3 stools at it, maybe. It was more of like a booth to wait at than anything. And that was certainly our thought when we renovated it. It was like, we've got to give a place for people to be able to walk in, sit at the bar, whether they're having dinner or wait for their table.
Well, I think if you are looking for a place to go and have a drink, that new patio area at Second Line seems very inviting to me. So my hat's off to you on that. And, even before the pandemic, your patio in the back was one of the best, I thought one of the best in Memphis to either eat or kind of hang out. We did that. That was always my go-to. Somebody wanted to meet for drinks, I'd say, well, meet me on the patio at Second Line.
I appreciate that. That was, we're lucky that we have already got an outdoor bar out there. Talk about when people want to sit outside and not be inside around people, maybe if they don't want to. I feel really lucky to have not had the foresight, because that's not really what it was, but that we happen to have installed an outdoor bar out there.
Well, looking back on the last 12, 13 years being in business, what have you learned about the business side of restaurants? That if there's an entrepreneur who's thinking, I want to open a restaurant, what should be going through their minds?
Well, I'll tell you that I didn't pay myself for the first 9 months we were open. And then I paid myself I think I started paying myself something like $40,000 a year when I could, but it was only half of that. That's all I could afford. So it takes a while, even with a small investment like what I made. This is a really tough business to be in. It's a low profit margin if you even get one, and you've really got to love it, just like anything else. I think you probably really have to love being a lawyer to go to work every day, and you've really got to love being a doctor to go to work every day. Some things pay more than others, but when you're in the middle of your day, sometimes what it pays is not really what you're thinking about. But you've truly got to love the idea of serving other people to get into this business, because there aren't. If I were to list out for the things that you would run into, so it's gonna be difficult for you to pay yourself at first. You're gonna give up your weekends, all of them, and people are gonna critically judge you on every aspect of their experience to your face. That's what you need to expect. And it takes a little bit of thick skin, and it takes the ability to listen to what people have to say. And you may disagree with them, and you may learn something from that criticism if it's not completely mean-spirited, or if they aren't a little unevenly angry at what it is, which does happen in restaurants too.
Right. Yeah, you're probably also dealing with a lot of issues that don't have anything to do with you. People's expectations created by all kinds of outside forces, and it just erupts right there in your place of business.
It does, and you've got to. I've learned in life that there are certain times when you should just stop and just take it. You know what I mean? And it could be a customer, it could be a friend that is just frustrated and they're not mad at you, but it's your role right now just to take it. And that's your role a lot when you're running a restaurant, is just to take it.
Well, one area that you kind of stepped out of I don't know if it's your comfort zone, but certainly maybe your brand, to invest in Phenos over on Madison. What was the motivation there? I know part of it, at least in the press, was reported that you want to just kind of save it because it's become a Memphis institution. How did that come about?
Yeah, so when they first announced that they were going to have to close, we touched base with them, and they had an East Memphis location and a Midtown location. We didn't want to run 2 restaurants; we wanted to run one. So we kind of let them go through their process. And when it came down to the end of it, we came to an agreement for us to take over the brand in the Midtown location. And we really did. I mean, we wanted that corner sandwich shop to exist in Midtown. I think that a lot of Midtowners will say that it's getting too corporate or too this or too that around here. And there was just no more Midtown place to me than that location and inphenos in general. And we thought that we could support more people doing it. That's been the driver behind a lot of what we do is, can we do this? Should we do this? And how many people can we employ, while making good business decisions at the same time? And we thought that really fit into what we wanted to do growth-wise.
How do you maintain the quality of a different genre, if you will? I mean, you're kind of, like you say, Memphis-inspired Creole, Cajun, and Fino's is Italian. Is there any challenge to that?
Oh, yeah. Now, I'll tell you, there are no more passionate fans of any establishment on the planet than Fino's. Okay. and I run into things from that place, not that we're doing things wrong, but people will say, you changed the bread, you did this, and we haven't changed anything. One of the hard parts that I've learned about that growth specifically is that no matter what you do, sometimes people are going to think that you have stuck your hand in somewhere that you shouldn't have to change something that didn't need to be changed, even if you hadn't. And you've just kind of got to roll with those punches. We have made a commitment from the beginning not to change anything that didn't need to be changed. And, there are things on that menu that we do that if I were starting from scratch, I would never do. That pasta salad is something that I would never make, and that I would go in there and change tomorrow. But it's the original recipe that they've been using forever, and I'm not gonna jockey with it.
Right. Now, speaking of change, you announced recently that Restaurant Iris is going to move out to the location of the former Grove Grill.
Laurelwood.
What facilitated that? And tell me a little bit about that, because that's great news for East Memphis folks.
Sure. Well, and it's actually good news for Midtown folks. We'll get back to that in a second, though.
All right.
So during the pandemic, with all the different pivots that we did, we realized a few things that we think that will guarantee the success of the restaurant, and therefore guarantee the success of our employees. And we needed a place to do some production work. And I'll tell you something I've never really told anybody else. We were this close to buying Leonard's Barbecue, this close to doing it. In fact, I believe it came down to us and Gus's. And I'm really glad that Gus has got that, because I think it's a perfect marriage for what they want to do and to spread the gospel of Memphis outside of Memphis.
Right.
But when that didn't work out for us, look, we could have operated Leonard's Barbecue the way that it is, and we could have done so many different things we've done virtual wine dinners. We've probably done more pivots than almost anyone has done this year, with nationwide shipping and stuff like that. There was a lot of space out there to do it, which led me to call my friend Corey Pruitt, who is the managing director and many other things at Laurelwood. And I asked him if he had any property for rent that was not nearly Laurelwood quality that we could just put a kitchen in and do some production out of. And he said, no, the only thing I have is the Grove Grill, which really got me thinking about the viability of what Restaurant Iris is. 12 tables that needs valet parking, because the parking problem in Overton Square is it's past the point of repair. I mean, you've seen it. You've tried to park around here. It's not easy. And it just solves so many things for us. And we thought, Iris out east makes a lot of sense. There's plenty of parking out there. We think that a lot of our customers have gotten out that way over the years. And we thought we could bring something really exciting to Midtown in the meantime. We own the building where Iris is, and I live in Midtown. So I've heard that, Iris leaving Midtown is not the things that Midtowners wanted to hear. I'm a Midtowner, and we're really excited to do a restaurant, honestly, that I've always wanted to do. I mentioned I lived in Barcelona. So we're going to open a Catalan restaurant called Panta there. Panta means swamp. So it'll be kind of in the vein of everything we've done in relating back to that Creole mentality. And we're really, really excited about it. It's going to be something very different than any restaurant that's in town right now.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've been to Barcelona a couple of times, and it's a unique food experience in Barcelona outside of any other part of Spain.
It's very, very unique cuisine. Very, and the cool thing that I kind of draw comparisons with the Catalan people in Spain and Memphis and Tennessee is that you can't really define Spain by describing someone who is Catalan, and you cannot describe Tennessee by describing someone who's from Memphis, or vice versa on either one of those things. And so we're kind of kindred in the fact that we're part of this bigger idea of a state or a country, but we're truly our own thing. We are our own people here.
Well, that's a very interesting way of looking at it, and I think you're absolutely right. Any other expansion plans, or is that enough for you?
Oh, that's enough. That is quite enough. Our industry is in a staffing crisis right now, and we're kind of lucky that the move out east is going to take a little longer than the transformation of Midtown, so we can kind of do one thing at a time. But no, that is quite enough for me at the moment.
Well, you mentioned the staffing issue. What do you think what is the short and long-term solution in your mind to the restaurant staffing issue? Is it a temporary thing, or is this systematic of a change in the American workforce?
I'd say it's both. I think that so when you think of the restaurants that you like to go eat out at, a lot of times you think about specific servers that you may have over and over, or bartender, or different people. A lot of our high end, and when I say high end, I don't mean fine dining. I mean quality of employee, which exists in every level of our business. A lot of those people, when they had that 6 to 12 months off, where they couldn't work and it wasn't their choice to not work, they went and finished their degree. They got their certificate in real estate, whatever it is. They started a podcast. They dove into their music or their film, whatever it is. And we've lost those employees forever. And they're not necessarily our employees or anyone's, but I'm talking about those employees that when they come in with a resume, and I get the resume in front of me, and I say, hire that person. They can start tomorrow. I know that they can do this, and we don't have to train them from ground zero. We have to train almost every employee these days from the floor up, from teaching them food safety or whatever it may be. So that plug and play employee that we're all looking for isn't there anymore. And a lot of the servers that you might go to a particular restaurant just because they work there, they might not be there either. It's a tough industry. I think that it showed, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, that our general model of how we do business as an industry was not tenable. And I think a lot of people said, I'm done with it. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I want to go do something else. I want to have weekends off. I want to raise a family. And so I think that for those people, that they are not coming back. But I truly believe in the changes that we've made both as a company and as an industry that are directly related to putting some quality of life back into the idea of what it means to work in a restaurant. Some flexible scheduling, maybe not being open for all the shifts that we used to be open for. And so I am bullish on the future of our industry. But there are a lot of people that I respect a lot that have left the industry, and I understand why.
Yeah, I think that's, as you say, it's kind of the restaurant industry, hospitality industry is kind of a microcosm. I've seen that in law. I've seen a number of people who took the last 18 months and pivoted in some way. they were a lawyer and now they're doing something a little bit different. And
Right.
it's an interesting phenomenon.
Yep. You know, I also think that there are true moments in the last year in every industry of PTSD. And you know, it was tough on all of us. And I think that sometimes when you're going through moments that create those type of memories and emotions, you just need a clean start somehow. And I think that that's true with a lot of I can think of a couple of my employees in particular. I can think of, you know, there are moments that I've had over the last year where, you know, it's overwhelming. And so, yeah, I think that sometimes people just need a fresh start. And, you know, money has nothing to do with it, with that part of it, nothing.
That's right. That's right. And you know, as you say, it's the people at a place is really what brings you back. And I'm as you were talking about, you know, service, I can think of half a dozen restaurants where my thought is of my server, you know, not necessarily the chef or anybody else, because you get that personal connection with them. And it'll come back in the sense that there'll be another crop of folks that come through, and maybe the working conditions will be such that you can see this more as a career, more than as a job.
You think about that every day, that what you just said. And, you know, this is going to sound strange coming from a chef, but part of the problem of this is if you go to a restaurant for the first time, you will give good service and bad food a second chance. You will not give good food and bad service a second chance. People don't like to feel like they haven't been taken care of. And so while we are, you know, rebuilding our industry from the ground up, we just need people to be a little patient with us as we kind of get back to where it is we need to be. You know, and that's everyone. But, you know, there is very little that can make. And when I say bad service, I don't mean a loose service. I just mean, you know, if someone's had a bad day and they show it to you, or you feel like you were mistreated, you know, there's a lot of nuance that goes into serving especially in a fancy restaurant where you kind of learn to read your guests a little bit. No one knows how to do that right now. And it's just going to take a minute.
You know, that's a great point that's not intuitive for a guy like me. So I'm glad you said that. People, I agree, people need to be a little more understanding. I think kind of generally everywhere. And I think at least right now, folks are.
I agree with that. I've been very concerned with when we open back up, if people would just kind of want us to go back to normal in their minds, what that looked like. And, you know, this is a very different industry than it was then. And by and large, I've experienced nothing but more grace than I could have ever asked for.
Well, very good. Well, Kelly, I think we're just about the end of our time. I appreciate your time. And I certainly appreciate everybody listening or watching, as the case may be. If you've enjoyed this, and of course you enjoyed it, it was a great show, and learned a lot about the restaurant industry, about Kelly English and his future plans. So please share us on social media, comment on us, email this around if you know somebody who you think would benefit from it. Kelly is going to go back to making great food, and I'm going to go get a little justice. So Kelly, again, thank you. And I'll see you soon at Iris or Second Line.
Thanks for having me.